Good evening, my dear chevra, dear teenagers from all over the world. Welcome, welcome. I am thrilled to be here with you this evening during our second program. I do have to tell you that a few hundred questions came in. I'm not exaggerating. Approximately 400 or 500 questions came in. And you can text your questions. 845-777-4747. I just want to announce that this program is going to continue. Lots of teens have emailed us and texted us that you really wanted to continue, so we're going to continue, God willing, bli neder. We'll have one next Thursday as well, 9:30 p.m. And we also have our classes with children for your younger siblings. We'll have Sunday at 2 in Yiddish for children, and then a week from Sunday, 4 o'clock p.m. in English for children all over the world. But for teens, we have it Thursday and once again next Thursday. If you want to come live on video with your questions so we can see you and hear you, please email live@theyeshiva.net, live@theyeshiva.net. If you want to come live, you are, of course, completely welcome just to text your questions, 845-777-4747. Let me begin with a little story that I actually heard from the person who heard it from the person that happened with. And it was very meaningful for me because it really is such a powerful message. So I was in Detroit some time ago for a Shabbaton, Partners in Torah, and we were having Shabbos lunch, and I was sitting near a dear friend from Detroit and a great Jew, a pillar of the community by the name of Gary Turgo, and he shared with me a little story that happened. He was sitting with the Prime Minister of Britain. Prime Minister of Britain was Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher was known as the Iron Lady because she was a very tough and strong person, and she was the Prime Minister of England for many years. And he was talking to her, and he asked her, what was the most awkward or difficult moment for you during the years when you were Prime Minister of Great Britain? And without skipping a heart's beat, she says, Gary, I'll tell you, I remember it like today. The custom in England is, the old tradition, that the Prime Minister of Great Britain has a weekly audience with the Queen. Tuesday, I think at 6 o'clock p.m., the Prime Minister goes to Buckingham Palace and spends 1 hour with the Queen of England, in which the Prime Minister shares the major events that have been going on in the government and the Parliament during the previous week. So Margaret Thatcher comes 1 week to the palace, to the Buckingham Palace. She comes into her appointment. It's Tuesday, 6 o'clock p.m. She walks in and she gives the traditional bow to Her Majesty, the Queen of England. And then when she takes a look at the Queen, a great nightmare unfolds in front of her eyes. Now, the young men listening to me may not appreciate this, but I know the young women listening or watching will appreciate it. What does she see? She sees that, to her dismay and horror, she is wearing the exact same outfit as the Queen of England. Mamish, an identical replica. Now, for us boys and men, it's not a big deal. We're very happy to share garments, more or less. But in the opposite gender, it can be a big deal. And she was just horrified. But as great gentlemen or gentlewomen in Britain, you couldn't say a word. So she spent the hour repressing her shame and horror at this uncomfortable, disrespectful reality that they're wearing the same outfit. She doesn't say a word. But finally, when it's over, 7 o'clock, and she leaves, the first thing she does is she sends an apology note to the Queen. And the apology note reads that I am so sorry for the unintentional disrespect I displayed by wearing the exact same outfit as the Queen of England. And I henceforth commanded my staff that every single week they should find out what the Queen is planning to wear so that I do not repeat the same mistake and wear the same outfit. And the Queen of England responded to the Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, I think it was the next morning, and this is what she wrote. She wrote, "No worries at all. There's no need to apologize because the queen never notices what commoners wear. I loved this story. First of all, maybe it tells you a little bit about the royal family in Great Britain. But I also love this story because I think there's a powerful lesson in it. And I'll tell you the lesson that I took out of the story in a very positive and upbeat way. It reminded me of the famous question of the Even Ezra in Parshas Shmos, why the first leader of the Jewish people, Moshe, did not grow up among Jews. You know, we have a law in the United States of America that if you want to be a president, you have to be a native. You have to be born here. One of the great conflicts between former President Obama and President Trump was when Trump accused Barack Obama that he was not born in the United States of America. And there's a logic to that. You have to be a homegrown potato, or at least a homegrown tomato. You know, you're born in the country, you're part of its culture. Asks the Even Ezra, Ben Avram Even Ezra, how is it that the first leader of the Jewish people wasn't raised among the Jews? He was raised in a non-Jewish palace. He didn't know what a Shalom Zocha looks like. He didn't know what a Bar Mitzvah looks like, what an Upshernish looks like. He didn't know what a jalapeno herring tastes like. He didn't know what sponge cake is. Come on, he didn't know what kneidlach is. Kneidlach are, gefilte fish. How could you be a Jewish leader without being entrenched in the culture of the Jewish people? That's what Even Ezra asks. He gives a very powerful, he gives two answers. One of the explanations is he says, if Moshe would have grown up among the Jewish people, he would have had the mentality of a slave, because the Jewish people were all slaves at the time. And somebody who grows up with the mentality of a slave cannot change the world. Moshe Rabbeinu was destined to be a melech, to be a leader. He had to revolutionize the landscape of Egypt. He had to stage a revolt, a mutiny against the most powerful monarch of the time. Moshe Rabbeinu had to take a nation of slaves and set them free and give them a sense of liberty and independence and power and destiny. If Moshe himself would have grown up among the slaves, he would have had that mentality of small-mindedness, of dejection. He would have been downtrodden, beaten. Moshe had to grow up in an environment of broadness, of expansiveness. Moshe had to grow up in a space of malchus, so he could think big, he can dream big, and then he can accomplish what he had to accomplish as the ambassador of the ultimate free being, the Ribono Shel Olam, Eved Melech. Moshe Rabbeinu could now fulfill his mission. One of the greatest challenges of so many people and so many young people is when you don't realize the inner royalty that lives and breathes within you. When you remember who you are, Kol Yisrael b'nei Melachim heim, as the Mishnah said. Every Jew is a prince or a princess. Or as the Zohar puts it, Kol Yisrael Melachim heim. You're not just a prince, you're the king or the queen. You're one with the king and the queen. Then you look at the world differently. You look at yourself differently. You see yourself from much larger eyes, much bigger eyes, much more expansive eyes. And even though there's always a commoner in us, which tells us how small we are, just like the queen said, you don't have to notice what the commoner is wearing. Of course, you know that there's a commoner there, but it doesn't take you over because you remember your essence. You remember your identity. You remember what the Gemara says in Shavuos, Eved Melech, Melech. The servant of a king is the king. He or she becomes an ambassador of the king, a representative of the king, and therefore you yourself are internally liberated. And I feel that during this time of coronavirus, when we're all quarantined and you're not going to school or whatever else you're involved in, it's really a time to define yourself in a new way, because you're not so much affected by your environment. You create your environment. And this is the point where you have to ask yourself, are you a slave or are you a king? Very often my life is based on the environment. I follow other people. We call it social conformity. They once asked a 104-year-old woman, what's the advantage of living till 104? And she said, no peer pressure. Usually there's a lot of peer pressure, and I fit into my school. I want to fit into the clique. I want to fit into the friends. I want to impress my teacher, my principal, this Rosh Hashiva, this one, that one. But now, in many ways, you're on your own. Now you have to answer the question, am I a slave or am I a king? Who am I for real? Who are you as an independent person? Remember those words in Aleinu. Ki ha-malchus shelcha hi. Malchus belongs to you. What does it mean? Malchus belongs to you, royalty belongs to you. We're not only talking to Hashem in heaven, we're talking to Hashem inside of me, inside of us. And we're saying, Ki malchus shelchahi. Who does my malchus belong to? Who owns my life? Who is the king in my life? Is it the slave in me, or is it the royal in me? Is it the animal in me, or is it the divine in me? Who rules my life? Is it the part of me that's infinite, that is capable, that is confident, that is full of resources, that is full of power and energy and creativity and hope? The part of me that is invincible and indestructible because it represents the divine light in this world? Is that the melech in me? Is that the one who rules my life? Or maybe it's my laziness, or my fears, or my traumas, or my addictions, or my insecurities. Of course, we have all these things. Not everyone, I and many of us have all these things. But the question is, who has the malchus? Who has the reins? Who carries the flag of royalty? We say 3 times a day, one of the most powerful statements in davening, Ki ha-malchus shelchahi. Malchus today is going to belong to the part of me that is royal, the part of me that is divine, that is sacred, that is wholesome, that is always perfect and has clarity and strength, the part of me that is completely one with infinity himself, with Hashem. And I hope all of you take these times, seize these historic opportunities. There is a lot of pain in the world now, but within pain, there is also opportunity. I remember when I was sitting Shiva for my father. So one night I went out of the house a little bit, just on the stoop. I went to the alley on the side just to get some fresh air after sitting a whole day with people coming. And I remember one of my nephews came out and we were schmoozing, and I turned to him and I said, his name is Mendel. And I said, Mendel, my brother's son. I said, Mendel, with tears in my eyes, I said, it's the end of an era. Because my father was quite an interesting personality. He represented an era. He was an institution. I said, it's the end of an era. And he looked at me without skipping a heart's beat, and he said, that's true. But it's also the beginning of a new one. And those words were very comforting, coming from my little nephew. Very powerful. Because what they were saying is that it's the end of an era. The door closed. And the door won't open until Chiyas HaMesim. The door closed. This door is shut, sealed, until Mashiach comes and the dead come back to life. But you can look at it as the door shut, and that's it, or a new door opened up. It's the end of an era, but that means it's the beginning of a new era. This is the end of an era. First of all, so many people of the older generation and of the younger generation passed away. I watch in community where I grew up in, and many of you communities where you grew up, we saw so many people, mentors, teachers, parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, great uncles, people we looked up to, men and women, whose soul were taken away, the end of an era. The question you and I have to answer is it only the end of an era, or is it going to be the beginning of a new one? And this is the time to be able to focus on that opportunity, seize the moment, to be able to discover so many deeper parts of yourself so that you can declare, Ki ha-malchus shelchahi, my dear teenagers. And now let us go to the questions. Lots of questions came in. I'm going to try to do as many as I can. 845-777-47474. The questions. Let me go to the page with the questions and let's see what is coming in, and we shall begin. Okay. Question number 1. What is the definition of a true friend? I like this question. What is the definition of a true friend? The definition of a true friend is somebody in whose presence you can think out loud. We all have acquaintances and friends, but we think before we speak. We decide what we're going to tell them, what we're not going to tell them. A true friend and somebody in whose presence you could just let your thoughts flow, not just your words. You can actually think out loud because there is complete trust. Now, it's very, very rare to have such a friend. But if you can have a friend maybe that is a little close to this definition, you're doing pretty well. If you can have 2 or 3 friends like this, wow. If you can have one friend like this, also pretty wow. You're very lucky if you have a friend with whom you can be truly, truly open and honest and bare your soul, bare your heart. And it's important in life. It's important in life to have a few people, or at least one person, with whom you can be completely, completely honest. Because honesty liberates your soul. Honesty allows you to be an authentic person. And there's no greater gift in life than the gift of authenticity, of integrity. I don't feel excited about Yiddishkeit anymore. I do all the right things, but there's absolutely no connection to Hashem. Wow. I daven, I do the mitzvahs, I follow all the routines, I follow all the habits, I follow all the customs and the laws, but I feel no connection whatsoever. It's dead and boring. I'm going to give you the following answer. What does it mean to have a connection with Hashem? What does it mean? What does it really mean to have a connection with Hashem? So one way of answering this question is a connection with Hashem means to have a connection with what? With yourself. A connection with Hashem means that you have a real connection with yourself. And I'll tell you why. What is yourself? What is Hashem? Hashem is not some big, strong, muscular being who sits somewhere in heaven and waits to reward you or punish you. That's a very primitive definition of Hashem. Hashem is the core of reality. Hashem is the essence of you. It's the essence of me. Hashem represents the essence of all reality. Hashem is the life force, the meaning, the purpose, the core of my being, of your being, of existence. Hashem equals reality. A relationship with Hashem means a relationship with you, a relationship with me. And therefore, I want to suspect something and I want to suggest something. I think maybe the reason you're not feeling a relationship with Hashem is because you don't have a real relationship with you, with yourself. If you can try to get rid of all the cover-ups, all the layers that cover up your true essence, if you can have somebody in your life with whom you can be so honest and really get to the core of your own being, your own existence, that's where you will discover Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu says this at the end of his life. La'avas Hashem Elokecha ki hu chayecha. Love God because He is your life. What is Moshe Rabbeinu saying? How can you love God? Va'aftas Hashem Elokecha. Why should I love Hashem? The answer is you already love Hashem. If you love yourself, you love Hashem. Hashem is your truest self. The question is, do you love your superficial self? Or do you love your truest self? Hashem is you. The more you can get in touch with your own honest self, the more you will automatically experience a relationship with Hashem, because that is at your deepest core. Let's go live. We have live, and we're going to go live. Anybody who wants to go live, you can send an email to live@theyeshiva.net. If you would like to ask your question on video so that we could see your beautiful face and hear your beautiful voice, or you could continue texting your questions to 845-777-4747. So let's go live. We have Arizona. Okay. Let's see if we can hear you. We have Binyamin from Arizona. Do we hear you, Binyamin?
Yes, hello.
Okay, everybody can hear Binyamin, I hope, right? Great. How are you, Binyamin? Where are you from? Phoenix?
It's called Scottsdale.
I know it's not called Scottsdale. It is Scottsdale. I had the opportunity to be in Scottsdale, Arizona a few times. So I see Binyamin here from Scottsdale. Thank you so much for coming on to our program. What's on your mind? How was quarantine in Arizona, first of all? How was quarantine in the desert? Is it better than New York?
It's boring. No.
It's boring?
Yeah, it's not so much to do.
Okay. What's on your mind tonight, Binyamin?
Okay, so I emailed you a few weeks last week or something, and my question was that a lot of kids are struggling deep inside emotionally and spiritually and need a lot of help. But the problem is that they're too afraid to open up to their parents and get help that they need. So what advice do you give teenagers that need help but are afraid of their parents' reaction that they need to get help?
Right. So let me discuss two possible options. And I think everybody has to apply one of them to their own particular life and their own particular situation. Imagine somebody offers me the following option. He say, you can have a child who's going to be, I'm a father. You could have a child who's perfect. He's perfect. First of all, as a baby, he never cries. He never demands anything. He always follows all of your orders and does everything right. Everything right. Wow, amazing. You can have so much nachas from him. There's only one issue. This is not a real baby. It's a make-believe baby. It's a statue. Of course, every parent will mock at that. The worst type of news to a parent is that their relationship with their child is not the real child. It's a statue. It's a picture. It's something fake. Every healthy and functional parent, the most important thing that they would cherish is an honest relationship with their child. Even though an honest relationship is painful. But think about if you have a close friend and everything is fake. It looks one way, but really it's a different way. It's really a worthless relationship. It's a meaningless relationship. Do you know the concept of a bonsai tree? Binyamin, you know what a bonsai tree is? So I'll tell you what a bonsai tree is. Trees have viruses, and trees have weeds, and trees have bacteria, and animals come and damage trees, and birds come. A bonsai tree is you create a tree that's not natural. You uproot anything that's negative. You cut in the tree. You cut around anything that is extraneous and external to the point that it becomes a beautiful, beautiful, perfect tree. There's only one problem. There's nothing real about it. It did not grow naturally. It's like a painting on the wall. They're always smiling. They're never sad because it's a painting. Real people have ups and downs. Real people have struggles. Real people go through things. So that's why I tell you, teenagers, you may be surprised if you sit down with your parents and share this with them. Say, Tati, Mami, do you want a relationship with a fake self or do you want a relationship with a real self? Let them answer that question. Tati, if you want a relationship with a fake self, no problem. We'll make a painting of me, of Binyamin or Yankel or Meir or David. We'll put it on the dining room wall, and that's who you'll have a relationship with. But if you want a relationship with the real self, I want to be able to speak my heart to you. Many, many parents will cherish it. So I encourage you, don't be so scared. Have the courage of taking that first initiative. And sometimes our parents need help. Many of them come from a time when they didn't have anybody to speak to openly. And they themselves are dealing with a lot of inner stress. So take the bold step and the courage to have a heart-to-heart conversation with your mommy and have a heart-to-heart conversation with your tati. Now, I know sometimes that's impossible. Sometimes there are parents you try and they're just completely in their own world and they're not capable of that. And then you need to have that relationship with other people. You need to reach out to somebody outside of the family. Maybe it can be a sibling, an uncle, an aunt, a friend, a therapist, a rabbi, a mashpia, a confidant, somebody, a rebbitzin, but somebody who you could trust, who you could begin that journey of honesty. And frankly, even if you're very open with your parents, it's good to have other people outside of the family with whom you're honest. But I think that in many cases, we are projecting on our parents our own fears, and you may be shocked if you're completely open to your parents. Somebody wrote to me once, a teenager, that their parents have all types of guests in their home because their parents are very into kiruv. So they have secular Jews constantly in their home, and they hear all types of questions and struggles. And yet when it comes to their own children, it becomes very, very difficult for them. And we could sometimes, in a very respectful way, speak to our parents and say, listen, do you want to have a real relationship with me? Do you think just because I'm your child, I'm a perfect bonsai tree? If we get terrible negative feedback from both parents, I can't speak to my mother, I can't speak to my father, then there are other situations that will help you. David HaMelech says in Tehillim, remember, chapter 27, you remember? Ki avi ve'imi azavuni v'Hashem yasveni. My father and mother abandoned me, but Hashem took me in. So we always have to remember that sometimes there's stages in life where we feel that our parents can't be here for us for whatever reason, good reasons or not good reasons, intentional or unintentional. Usually it's because of their own limitations. They're also people. Our parents are not perfect. They love us. Many of them will die for us. But they're not always perfect. They're usually not perfect. And sometimes we have to remember that despite that, God will always embrace you, and I have to develop that relationship with Hashem. And sometimes other people will help me out in that. That's how I would respond to your question.
Thank you.
Anything else, Binyamin, on your mind?
That's all. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Binyamin, for coming on. We appreciate it. A lot of hatzlacha. You can come on live if you wish and ask your question live at theyeshiva.net, or you can text your question. But if you want to come on live at theyeshiva.net. Next question. Okay, let me get this right. I see that alcohol, is not only all right, but it's sometimes encouraged by religious people. Of course, under control, not overdone, not driving when you're drunk, a proper setting with friends, at a wedding, at a bar mitzvah, at a kiddush in the synagogue. Pot is now legal in many places and soon everywhere. Both alcohol and pot can be abused or not abused. Both are intoxicating, albeit in a different way. One can make pot brownies and have it at a kiddush in shul on Shabbos. Many do. Is there anything wrong with that? If yes, what's the difference between pot and alcohol? This is a question by Moshe. Wow, Moshe. This is an interesting question. So let me try to tell you how I see it. And that is, the first thing is, let me make a qualification about alcohol. Yes, we say l'chaim, we make kiddush on wine, we drink 4 cups of wine on Pesach, and we make a l'chaim at different occasions, whether it's a kiddush, a farbrengen, a simcha, people's house, Shabbos and shul, etc. But you have to be very, very careful with alcohol, because you and I know many, many people who are addicts. They are alcoholics, and their life is unmanageable, and they destroy themselves through that addiction to alcohol. So it's very, very important to be able to know that alcohol can be extremely dangerous and destructive. And don't learn from adults who drink and drink and drink, because it's not a Jewish thing. It's repulsive, it's disgusting, and it's destructive. Purim, the halacha says, you could become intoxicated. Yeah. There's moments we say a l'chaim, but it has to be done with sensitivity, with measure, with discipline, as you said. But now let's discuss pot for a moment. The fact is that you're dealing with something that is extremely addictive. And you could just look at people who take it, and they take it again, and they sometimes take it all the time, or at least very, very often. It's extremely addictive. And you know what happens? So many people who are addicted to it, or just take it so often, begin to live not real lives. They're living delusional lives. They become detached from reality because it makes you high and you see the world in a certain way, in a certain perspective. It feels very good. But here's the rule in life, Moshe. Let me tell this to you because this is very, very important. Any joy and stimulation that comes from outside of yourself is fake. It's not going to last, and it's ultimately going to make you more miserable than before, because when you come back to your regular self, you're going to see that your void is still there, and you're going to need more and more and more to fill the void. The proper path in life is to be able to find the stimulation and the joy from within. So you're dealing here with something that is extremely addictive, something that can also damage cells in your brain, neurological cells, and that's also extremely, extremely dangerous. And what happens is you develop, very often, people develop a lifestyle where they're just not honest. They come home at night, there's a little pressure, you start communicating with somebody, and he's not here. He's flying high. His eyes are glazed. And especially later in life, you want relationships with people. I know fathers who take it. They come home, they can't have a relationship with their wife and their children. Why? Because they're addicted to all these types of things. Can you explain why, if chametz is so prohibited on Pesach, because it symbolizes ego and matzah symbolizes humility, we should eat matzah all year around and not be allowed to eat chametz all year? Even Shabbos, we eat bread, we eat challah, and these are very inflated foods. We eat sourdough. I don't understand. If chametz is so bad, it should be bad all year. Great question. And the answer is because chametz represents the ego. Matzah represents humility. We need a ego, but we need a healthy ego. We need a godly ego. So for 8 days, we focus on bittul. We focus on complete humility. So now we can rediscover a self that is not a negative self or a superficial self, but it's a divine self. That's the idea. So for 8 days, you focus on complete humility. It's like when you're in a situation where somebody really strips you from all layers and you could be so honest and you're completely humbled. And now you can recreate yourself, but you can discover a much deeper self, an ego that is really part of Hashem's ego. Not ego of easing God out, but rather ego which is Ich bin Gott Hashem, an ego which represents you are an ambassador of Hashem in this world. That's who your real I is. They say that the students of the Mezritcha Maggid were once sitting around and they were asking a question, what are you supposed to do with your ego? What are you supposed to do with this sense of haughtiness and arrogance and pompousness, and I can't make mistakes? And everybody gave a different solution how to deal with the ego. And they came to the Baal HaTanya. Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi was the youngest student of the Mezritcha Maggid. And he answered with 4 words. And he said, Hagaiva v'hagdula l'chai elamim. Hagaiva v'hagdula. The arrogance, gaiva's arrogance and great belongs to the one who lives forever. Meaning, the solution to gaiva is to have real gaiva, to align your gaiva with l'chai elamim, to realize who your real self is. My real self is an expression of Hashem in this world, a conduit for infinity in this world. That's the ego that you want to cultivate. That's the ego that brings you ultimate self-confidence when you realize that your self is aligned with the ultimate self. That's the great answer to your wonderful, wonderful question. I am not motivated, Rabbi Jacobson, I am not motivated at all anymore. It's very, very hard for me to be at home. We do have some schedule in school, but I'm really cheating. I'm not doing anything. There's no social environment. I can't go to school. I just stay home. I don't really open a book. My mother is upset. My father is upset. And I really don't know what to do during this time of quarantine. I'm lying. I'm deceiving. I'm fooling them. They believe me very often. But inside, I feel empty. Wow, that's a good question. Comes from Yossi. Thank you. Thank you for that question. You know, I have a friend, Mayor K, and he produced a beautiful video, a very, very interesting video. I want you to see it. Let's play the video if we could for a moment. Let's play the first video. I want you to see it. It's a great...
Okay, guys, we know the plan, yeah?
Yeah, we went to Jeffrey's wedding. On the way back, our tire busted, and we had to push the car all the way home.
And because of that, last night, we didn't have time to rest up or prepare for today's test.
Stick to the story and we'll be fine.
I just hope the professor falls for this story because I cannot fail another test.
Hey, boys. Hey, so you're ready for today's test?
The king of compassion and kindness.
Professor, the man of the hour.
Do you have any other blazers?
All right, what's up, boys?
So, about last night.
We went to a buddy's wedding and one of the tires busted out.
Yeah, it was like really, really scary. I was frightened.
So the tire busted and...
We had to push the car back and it took us all night and frankly, we're not ready to take today's test.
Okay, I'll tell you what, boys. You can take the retake for the test tomorrow, okay? How's that?
Really?
Yeah, go home, wash up, get some rest.
Thank you.
And I'll see you guys tomorrow, okay?
Okay.
Is that all right?
Thank you so much.
Okay, good job.
Thank you. All right, have a good day.
Okay, you've got 30 minutes to complete this test. Please flip over your papers and begin now. Boys, you have got to take responsibility for your lives. That's today's lesson. And your lives are going to be the test. It's not your parents, it's not your age, it's not past relationships, it's not an argument you had, it's not the flat tire that's to blame. You, and only you, are responsible for every choice and decision you make. So own up to it, boys, and make your futures great.
Wow. You get the point? These students were lying to their teacher. They weren't ready for the test because they had to fix their tire all night and they didn't have time to study. And then this teacher was quite brilliant and knew they were lying. He asked the question on the test. The main question was 99 points was, which tire was it? And of course, each student had to answer that question independently because smart, perceptive people know when you're saying the truth and know when you're lying. Here's the rule in life, my dearest friend, and that is ultimately, we could blame a lot of people for a lot of things. You may be right, you may be wrong, probably 50% right, 50% wrong. There comes a time you have to take responsibility for yourself. You have to be honest with yourself. Remember, you could fool the world sometimes, not all the time, but the person standing in front of the mirror, you can't fool. That image you see in the mirror, you won't be able to fool. Be honest with yourself and take responsibility for your life. This is a great, great moment. This is a great moment because, as I said in the beginning of tonight's program, because we're isolated, because you're in quarantine, realize that ultimately you are the one who calls the shots. You could blame your mother, you could blame your father, you could blame your Rebbe, you could blame your community, you could blame your teacher. And a lot of it is true. A lot of it is true or not true. I don't know the situation. But ultimately in life, realize you're a master. You're a king. You're a chelik elikam al mamish. You're an ambassador of God in this world. You can choose to be the author of your own biography. Don't let other people write your biography. Let you write your biography. And you know which you? The real you, the deep you, the infinite you. Let that you write your biography. Let's go to the next question, my dearest friends. If you want to come live and ask your question, you can email live@theyeshiva.net. I would like to ask you, you told us last program that internet itself is not the problem. It's how the internet is used and how often it's used and what sites are visited. How do you explain the City Field gathering in 2012 where they said that internet is evil? Okay, well, I think at the City Field gathering in 2012, the speakers were addressing the dangers that could come from the internet. Because I assume that, I don't know everybody, but almost every single rabbi that I know has an email address, which means he has some contact with internet, maybe himself or his gabbai or a secretary has internet. I think every single Rosh Yeshiva in the world, his office is run through internet. At least there's some level of internet. So how can it be the embodiment of evil if almost everybody is using it in some form or some fashion? I don't know if today there is one sefer that is authored without the assistance of internet on some level. So it can't really be the embodiment of evil. Of course, the idea is it's a very powerful force and it could be used in the most amazing ways, and it can also be used in foolish ways and sometimes in destructive ways. And that's why it's so important to be able to have control how many hours you're on the screen, what websites you visit, making sure you don't have a gaming addiction and a screen addiction, making sure you have the right protection and filters and so on and so forth because of the powerful dangers. But on the other hand, this could not happen without the technology of the internet. All the schools that are teaching the children today through Zoom or through FaceTime or through other technology are all using the internet. Hashem is the one who created the power of the internet. And you know why? It says in Pirkei Avos at the end of Perek Vav, Kol ma shebara Kadosh Baruch Hu ba'olamai lo broi ela lichvayda. Everything Hashem created in the world has one purpose, and the purpose is it should become a conduit to bring godliness, oneness, goodness, and holiness in the world. That's the purpose of every power and potential that exists in the world, including electricity, including the World Wide Web. The purpose of the World Wide Web is what? Mala ha'aretz deis Hashem kamayim layam mechasim. To fill the world with divine awareness like water covers the sea, as the Navi says in Yeshaya Perek Yud Aleph. Like every great force, it can be used in ways that run contrary to the very purpose of the web. When somebody uses the web for something that's ungodly and unholy, They're not only fighting Hashem, they're fighting the World Wide Web, because that's the ultimate purpose of the web. And that's why you have to be very careful, and you have to have discipline, and you have to have boundaries. Great questions. Great question. Okay. Wow. Okay, this is an interesting question, and I see there's a few questions from quite a few teenagers. 3 questions came in, the same question. I want to ask you a question that's been bothering me and my friends for a very long time. Hopefully you'll have an answer from a Jewish perspective. We call Hitler evil, and the reason we call Hitler evil is because he killed so many millions of innocent people. And yet we had Amalek, and we are told that we should kill out all of the Amalekites. The same is true with the 7 nations, based on our belief. So we also justify genocide. We have our agenda. We have our belief. Hitler did genocide, but the Torah also says you should kill out all the children of Amalek. He had a vision for the world, and Jews had their vision for the world. Why do we call him evil? Of course, I know he was wrong for obvious reasons, but why are we judging him as a brutal person when our religion also calls for the genocide of Amalek? Okay. How do we do this? How do we do this in a brief way? This is a very, very good question. This is a good question. It's an important question. Let me just make a few qualifications, and that is, as the Rambam puts it very clearly, with all of the 7 nations in Eretz Yisrael, the fact is that the Gemara Yerushalmi says it, and the Rambam quotes it, Yehoshua sent each of them a letter. And the letter was, he gave them 3 options. One option was to leave. Another option was to make peace, and they would pay taxes and have to live according to the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach under Jewish rule. And the third option was to fight. So there was no mitzvah. The Rambam says no mitzvah to go in and kill every Canaanite and his wife and his child. There was a letter that Yehoshua sent to every single nation. In fact, the Girgashi left. So they always had a chance to leave or to remain and observe the morality of the Sheva Mitzvah Noach, and a Jew was not allowed to touch them. Or there was the ability of the third choice, which was war. This is the view of the Rambam, who is considered the greatest halachic authority in Jewish history. The Rambam says this clearly, and it's based on a Gemara in Yerushalmi. That's number one. Even when they went to war against the Knainim, you know what the halacha was? They weren't allowed to surround the city from four sides. You know why? Because then the enemy becomes desperate, and he has no choice but to fight back. They had to leave one side open so that the enemy could run away at any point. Imagine fighting a war this way. This is how the Jews had to fight the war. This is what the Chazal tell us. They surrounded it from 3 sides. One had to remain open. Even Amalek, the Rambam says, the first choice had to be to allow them to make peace with the Jewish people and to live according to the moral standards of civilization, which is the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, no murder, and the other Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, no stealing, no murder, respect for God, respect for animals, respect for marriages, and have a judiciary system. The Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. Even Amalek, this is what he says. Amalek, he says, you had to first offer a peaceful agreement in which they would let go of the sword and let go of their ambition to kill every single Jew. Okay, that's next step. Now I'm going to go to the next step. When you ask about Torah killing Amalek, if they didn't agree to this and you killed Amalek and the children, you have to see it in the context of all of Judaism. When you read through the Torah, who invented the idea of Ahavta l'reacha kamocha? Love another person like you love yourself. This is from Judaism, Parshas Kedoshim. Who invented the idea, ki b'tselem elokim asa es ha'adam? Every human being was created in the image of God. Shoifech dam ha'adam b'dam yishafech. When you pour the blood of a person, there's a death penalty because you murdered the image of God. Not a Jew, even a non-Jew. This is Parshas Bereshis and Parshas Noach. That every single human being was carved out in the image of God, and therefore every human being, man and woman, Jew and non-Jew, child and adult, has infinite dignity. Ki b'tselem elokim asa es ha'adam. This is Judaism. This is what Judaism gave the world. Who invented the idea that there's something called right and wrong? There's something called morality. There's something called a moral conscience. This is Judaism. The Mishnah says in Sanhedrin that Judaism taught the world Adam was created as one person. Why? So that no human being should ever turn to another human being and say, I am superior to you. My race is superior to you. My tribe, my religion, my faith, my background, and therefore I could kill you, which is the basis of Nazi racism. Why? Because we all came from the same person. If we all come from the same person, how could you be superior? It's like brothers and sisters. We share the same genes. We share the same chromosomes. We come from Adam and Chava. That's why Hashem created one person from which everybody comes. These are the gifts of Judaism to the world. So when you look at Judaism, you have to understand, study Nazi textbooks and see what they felt about people who are retarded, people who are black, people who are crippled, people who are disabled, people, of course, who are Jewish. Look at their culture. Look at the literature they produced about people who did not embody the great Aryan race. The whole culture, the civilization was based on the ideals that are the opposite, the antithesis of Judaism, the ambition to create a world of bloodshed, violence, barbarity, brutality. Hitler once said that we hate the Jews because they circumcised the world. They circumcised the world physically through a bris, and they circumcised the world psychologically by giving us a conscience. For him, a conscience was a curse. He once said we have to get rid of the Jews and their life-denying 10 commandments. The 10 commandments are life-denying because the law of the jungle, the survival of the fittest. If you're stronger than me, you kill me. The lioness fights with the antelope and the antelope loses. That's the law of nature. And he said, this is how life is supposed to be. If you're weak, which means if I could kill you, that's the right to kill you. Look at the jungle. That's how it works. The baby elephant doesn't say, but I'm so cute. Why are you killing me? Because you're a baby. That's why I kill you. Because you're retarded. Because you're crippled. This is the greatest antithesis to Judaism. So I want you to look at Judaism in its full context. See all the psukim, see all the halachas. And then look at the Amalek story. Don't just pluck out one mitzvah from all the mitzvahs of the Torah and compare that to Nazism. Study Nazism. I don't know if you want to study it, but you could read Mein Kampf. I don't think you should, but it's available. Unfortunately, it's quite available. And you'll understand the whole backbone of what Nazi culture was, what Hitler represented versus lahavdil, what Moshe Rabbeinu represented, what the Jewish sages represented, what the morality of Judaism represents. Rachmanim, Baishanim, Goim lechasadim. The Gemara says in Maseches Sotah Daf Yudalid that the whole Torah, Tchilasa Gemilas Chasadim, V'Soifa Gemilas Chasadim. The Torah begins with kindness and it ends with kindness. It's the beginning of Judaism and the end of Judaism. The Gemara says in Shabbos Lamed Aleph that Hillel told a convert, a non-Jew, he said, teach me the whole Torah on one leg. Meaning 10 seconds, and he says the whole Torah is what you dislike to be done to you, don't do to anybody else. Ve'idach pirushu, everything else is a commentary. Now go study the commentary. The whole Torah is a commentary on treating another person like you treat yourself. It's important to understand context. Now, finally, you'll ask the question, okay, but how can you kill every child of Amalek? And the answer to that is, I guess, it makes us uncomfortable. And you know why? I want to tell you something. You know why it makes you uncomfortable? Because you grew up with Jewish values. That's why it makes you uncomfortable. Because for thousands of years, we have been preaching about the dignity of life. And that's why it makes so many Jews uncomfortable when we read about Amalek. There's certain cultures, when you tell them that every Israeli has to be killed, they're perfectly fine. Every Jew has to be killed, they're perfectly fine. They have no problem. Jews, when you tell them Amalek has to be killed, we all don't feel good about it. You know why we don't feel good about it? That's the greatest testimony to Judaism. Because for thousands of years, we have been indoctrinated in the deepest way that life is the most sacred thing in the world. It shows you the Jewish attitude. Okay, now after everything's said and done, Rabbi YY, Tachlis, what's the idea? So I'll just say this very, very brief. It's going to take me, I think, 30 seconds. And that is as follows. When you think about it, let's understand. If I knew for sure that the baby in the crib is going to grow up to be Joseph Mengele or Joseph Goebbels or Himmler or Adolf Eichmann or Alfred Rosenberg or Goering or Rudolf Hess or Adolf Hitler, and I can kill the child, or I could not kill the child, what do you think is the right thing to do? Now, nobody knows that this baby is going to grow up to be Eichmann, but let's say you do. Think about it. What would be the answer? Now, even in this case, the Rambam says that if Amalek is ready to change his colors, you're not allowed to kill anybody of Amalek. And the Gemara says, "Mibnei banav shel Haman lamdu Torah b'Bnei Brak." The grandchildren of Haman came and learned Torah in Bnei Brak, and Haman came from Amalek, because we trust that then this baby will be educated as a mensch. But what God is saying is that there's a certain situation where I'm telling you that each one of these children is going to murder and going to want to murder every single Jew alive. And that's why it's a moral mitzvah. That's, I think, a brief presentation that at least gives some perspective to this situation. If anybody wants to come out live, we have another few minutes. You can come live too. You can come up live. Just email live@theyeshiva.net. Wow, this is an interesting question. And it goes like this. There's a big debate in my house. There are rabbis, a few rabbis, who said you can continue to have minyanim, you could continue to go outside, you can continue to go to shul. Is this das Torah? Some people in my house are saying this is das Torah and it's a legitimate opinion, and some people are saying it's not a legitimate opinion. What is the truth? We see clearly that 99% of the rabbis, the moment they found out about how serious this pandemic was, they changed their mind. We all made a mistake. Purim, I had a big fabrengen, a big party. We were hugging and kissing each other. But 99% of rabbis, when they found out what is going on, when they started to hear about the funerals and the levels of devastation and illness, they changed their mind and they closed the yeshivas, the shuls, the seminaries, and all the schools. They themselves changed their mind because initially we simply did not realize how serious this was. On the contrary, we thought when there's a problem, you go to shul more, you daven more, you make a minyan, you say tehillim together. But then when they realized, and we realized, unfortunately too late, the tragedies and how dangerous it is, 99% of rabbis changed their opinion from one extreme to another extreme. So it's obvious they themselves are saying that the original verdict was a mistake. Now you have to understand that rabbis are human beings. They make mistakes. Even the Sanhedrin, the great Supreme Court, 71 people who got smicha, man to man from Moshe Rabbeinu, could make a mistake. We have a whole Masechta called Yuriy. Yuriy, it's based on Parshas Vayikra, means that the Sanhedrin, the greatest body and spiritual body of Jews who were brilliant and righteous and holy and educated and knowledgeable, sometimes could make a mistake. A rabbi is not God. A rabbi is not infallible. And sometimes he may not know all the facts. He may not see everything. He may not be aware of everything. We have in Gemara situations where our sages, Amoraim, said, Dvarim shamarti lifnechem ta'us heim biyadi. The words that I said were an error. That's why when a rabbi gives a verdict, we have a halacha that in a respectful way, one can find out mehechan dantuni. What is the source? The power of a rabbi is the power of Torah. If there's no Torah here, it's not something you have to listen to. A rabbi doesn't have independent power. The definition of a rabbi is somebody who's a complete conduit for Torah. And that's why a rabbi, the most important thing is to be humble, to be able to look for the truth and to be able to acknowledge the truth and to be able to always show what his source is. And if a rabbi sometimes doesn't know the facts, he can make an error, not because he's not a good person. He's a human being, and a human being could make mistakes. I think we have to understand that. If we would have known today, if we would have known Purim what we knew today, don't you think most rabbis would have answered going to other homes for shalach manos? Of course, pikuach nefesh is more important than mishloach manos. That's how I think about it. I see from my balcony youngsters, including Bachrim, this is Israel. I see from my balcony they're mingling. I tell them, don't you see the angel of death behind you? And they look at me as if I came from another planet. I tell them, I know you don't read the media, but don't you know about the funerals, about the tragedies? Why are you mingling with each other? I speak to them, but they ignore me. They laugh from me. They think I'm crazy. Tell me, Rabbi Jacobson, what's the root of this? Where are the flaws in our educational system, which created people without feelings? I don't understand this. How does this work? I am suddenly learning how in history people could be so indoctrinated that they don't think anymore for themselves. What happened here? And when this virus goes away, are we just going to go back to normal, or we're going to figure out what went so wrong in our education? This is a question that came in from Jerusalem. Okay. I can only tell you what I feel about this. And what I feel about this is there's a few issues that I think. First of all, many of us suffer from a herd mentality. A herd mentality means you don't think on your own. When you're taught that your brain is bad and you're not allowed to think and you're not allowed to ask questions and you're not allowed to wonder and you're not allowed to be curious and you're not allowed to be honest, this is what happens. Judaism is never allowed to shut down your critical skills. Don't become a zombie. Don't become a robot. Don't become a brainwashed person. Jews always knew that the greatest gift in the world, one of the greatest gifts, is to use your critical mind, to investigate, to question. Imagine if Avraham Avinu would have believed his father. What would have happened? We would have still been worshiping statues. Thank God Avram smashed all the idols. What if we would have told him, no, your father says it's true. Avram says, this is not true. This is ridiculous. I'm going to smash the idols. The whole idea of Torah is to bring out the most creative parts of the human soul and the human spirit. So that's number one. I'm going to tell you a beautiful interpretation from Reb Shimshon Raphael Hirsch in Parshas Emer. You know, in Parshas Emer it says that Koyanim who were disabled or crippled were not allowed to serve in the Beis HaMikdash, the Avodah. And he asks why. And Reb Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, who was a rabbi of Frankfurt in the 1800s in Germany, Frankfurt am Main, he says something very, very potent and powerful. There are other explanations, but I'm just telling you what Rav Hirsch says. And he says as follows. He says that the Torah was trying to teach you, people often feel that religion is for people who are weak and disabled and crippled and blemished. And then you need to hold on to God and paradise and Olam Haba because you're a loser in this world. So they tell you you're going to be a winner in the next world. As Karl Marx said, religion is opium for the masses. The Torah is telling you, no, that's not religion. A religion that's serving you because you're emotionally or psychologically crippled, that's not religion. Religion is for people who are healthy, who are creative, who are critical, who get it, who are looking for the truth. Yiddishkeit is not for weak people, it's for strong people. The Pasuk says in Tehillim, there's an Isser in Torah to castrate an animal. That's why in Israel they have a problem with all the cats. You're not allowed to castrate an animal. You know why? Why? The answer is you're never allowed to destroy the productive power, the creative power, even of a dog, you're not allowed to destroy. The Koyach HaYetzirat, Yiddishkeit wants your fullest power and creativity and brilliance and genius, not herd mentality. Yiddishkeit wants you to explore, to flex your muscles. Giboirei Koyach Oisei Dvarei, as David HaMelech says in Tehillim. When you create people and you destroy their creativity and you don't let them think, this is often the result. I also think there's another element. Many of our youth grew up in Israel where they were taught their whole life that there's us versus them. We are the real Jews, and the policemen and the soldiers are Parsha Yisrael, they're sinners. Suddenly, the policemen are coming into their communities, trying to save their lives. There's something off here, cognitive dissonance. All my life, I was taught that these policemen are the worst of the worst, but now the policemen are sacrificing their own life to help save our lives. How do you deal with this? To acknowledge that would be very, very humbling. And when there's cognitive dissonance, people could sometimes continue their delusions, and therefore they call them Nazis. And it's horrible. It's horrible. I also think there's a third element. It's too novel for a lot of people. Our whole life you're taught when you have a problem, run to shul. You have a problem, go say Tehillim b'tzibur. You have a problem, go to the Beis Medrash, learn more. Suddenly we're saying, you have a problem, stay home. It's not something that people could wrap their brains around. Another element is, we often don't serve God. We serve our image of God. You know what the Meshech Chochmah says why Moshe broke the tablets? Because he told the Jews, you're making a mistake. The tablets are not holy. We don't worship objects. We worship a God who is not defined by any image. Some of us are used to worshiping minyanim. I have to daven with a minyan. I have to go to the store. I have to go to the mikveh. This is how you serve God. because we're not serving God. We're serving our image of God. My image of God is davening with a minyan. What if Hashem now wants you not to daven with a minyan? What if Hashem wants you not to hang out in the supermarkets and the stores, not to go to the simcha, not to go to the mikveh? It's very hard for people to wrap their brains around. There's another element, and that is in some communities there was failed rabbinic leadership. And finally, you'll forgive me, but I'm going to quote Albert Einstein, who said, two things are infinite in this world. Two things are infinite: the universe and stupidity. And I'm not sure about the former. Sometimes people are simply not using their mind. And this is, I think, the lessons that we should take away from this, because these are some great mistakes that some of us have made. I mean, this is how I see it. Okay, do we have anybody coming live? Joel, Yoel? Is Yoel on here? Okay, so Yoel, it's hard for Yoel to come on live. Let me read this question. Why can't Mesiftas use Zoom instead of phone conferences? And do you think using Zoom for a shir of Mesifta Bachim is better than being on the phone? My children's schools are all using Zoom. I have two boys who learn in a great Mesifta in Chicago. It's a wonderful, wonderful yeshiva. And they right away moved on to Zoom. It's much better because you see your teacher and you see your friends, and they can shmooze and ask questions and fabring together and discuss the learning together, ask questions together, pilpul talmidim, dibuk chaverim. So I think it's much better. And I think it would be a good idea. I know that some of the yeshivas are afraid because of the technology. What my children's yeshiva is, they got somebody, one of the fathers, to sponsor, and they rented an iPad, and they filtered out everything. It only allows for the Zoom of yeshiva, and they sent it to each of the boys by mail, which was an unbelievable gesture, and that's what they're using. It's great, and a lot of other schools are using it, and I think that would be a pretty good idea. What can we say when we hear a rabbi lecturing and we know and we see that he himself does not act that way? He's an absolute hypocrite and he's lying. I would make an appointment with him and speak to him respectfully. Give him the benefit of the doubt. He may show you certain things. He may explain to you certain things, and he may show you that maybe you didn't see the full picture. That's the first thing I would do. Give him the benefit of the doubt and talk to him, or write him a respectful letter. Don't accuse him. If he gets angry at you and he screams at you and he throws you out and he gets angry for even suspecting him, so then maybe you need somebody else in your life, because the most important quality of a rabbi and of a spiritual leader is truthfulness, honesty, integrity, emes, which comes with real humility and knowing that you don't own Judaism, you don't own God. You are a humble servant. The Gemara says in Yuriy Daf Yud that Reb Gamliel wanted to appoint two great sages as leaders, and they refused. And when they came to him, he said, "Kimeduma sheshrara, kimeduma atam sheshrara, ani noisen lachem, avdus ani noisen lachem." You think I'm trying to appoint you as leaders? I'm trying to appoint you as servants. Because by Jews, the definition of a leader is that you're an eved, you're a servant, even more than other people. The Gemara says in Brachas Daf Chav Beis that when a king davens Shemoneh Esrei and he bows down, Baruch Atah, he doesn't pick up his head by Hashem, he keeps his head down the whole Shemoneh Esrei. Everybody else in the shul has their head up besides the king. You know why? Because since he's so powerful, he has to understand that he's really more powerless. He has to be more humble than other people, because if not, power corrupts. And rabbis also need this very, very much. This is the most important quality of literally every single leader. Rabbi Jacobson, Mati, why are you frum? Why are you a religious Jew? I love you. That's a great question. I love this question. Excellent. So we got to wrap this up. Let me give you a brief answer. I am from because I believe that Torah is true. I believe that Torah is authentic. I believe that Torah is Torah's emes. It's the true blueprint for living. That's why I'm from. That's my That's my short answer. The Torah resonates. Its truth resonates. And the more I learn, the more I see it, the more I understand it, the more I experience it, the more I feel it. I think it's the healthiest, truest, deepest, most powerful blueprint for life. I know the struggles of being a real Jew. I'm not always interested. I have my questions. I have my struggles. I have a Yetzer Hara. I make mistakes. But it resonates. Its truth resonates. And the more I open myself up to it, the more I see it. With each year and month and week of my life, I see it more. Maybe one way of addressing this question is by looking at the world. And I love studying about the world. The Rambam says in the opening of his book that the path to love and fear God is by studying the universe. And when you study the universe, you see that every single thing that exists, every living organism, and even lifeless matter, everything has its function and purpose, and it knows exactly what to do. The bee knows exactly what to do. The mosquito, the bat, the antelope, the lioness, and the elephant, every shrub, every bush, every tree, every blade of grass, the lightning, the thunder, the sun, everybody knows exactly what they follow the laws of nature that allow our planet and our universe to exist, and they support life. And it's incredible because we're not dealing with a few thousand details like a factory of a few hundred machines. We're dealing with a factory of trillion infinite machines, with each one has trillion details, and everybody knows exactly what to do. There's 50 trillion cells in my body, and they know exactly what to do. It's incredible. And then there is one living organism who doesn't know what to do. And that's who? You and me. We get up in the morning. Who am I? What's my purpose? Why am I alive? Isn't it funny? We're supposed to be like after billions of years, 15 billion years of evolution, you have the Homo sapien, the human being, and we're the only ones who are confused. I don't know what hit me. I'm going to therapy. Who am I? Who am I not? Do I have a purpose? What's my meaning? So the whole world is following this incredible journey of give and take. And we're the only ones who are like out of this picture. You know, we're at the wedding and where do I fit in? We are the only creatures who have consciousness and awareness to ask these questions. And it's the Torah that is the missing link between the cosmos and the human being. The Torah is the blueprint that allows me to appreciate where do I fit in the whole picture. So it synchronizes me and nature. As the sun rises and I say Shema and I daven with sunrise, suddenly I gave meaning to all of the predictable patterns of nature. And the more I explore Torah, the more I see how it becomes the blueprint that synchronizes the individual human being with the whole story of creation and the cosmos. That's one thought that comes to me in response to your question. How do you define spirituality? What exactly is it? Wow, it's a great question, Miriam. Great question. There's so much to say about it, but I would just say the part in me, the part in you that is searching for the truth of existence, that part in you that is searching for the music, for the secret, for the inner core of the I and of existence, that's how I would define the spiritual self. Whew. What can you tell me? Why is it that so many of us waste our talents? We waste our talents and we squander our lives. They tell us in yeshiva one thing: you have to learn and learn and learn and learn, and there's nothing else. But so many of us have different talents and it goes wasted until we die. Why is it, and what can we do about it? That's an unbelievable question. And the truth is that I think what Torah wants so much is that everyone should maximize their talents. I don't see it as mutually exclusive. The more I learn Torah, the more I see in Torah the greatest invitation for ultimate human creativity. Torah wants from a person to be shut. The Gemara says in Shabbos, Kuf Yates, Shutif la Kadosh Baruch Hu b'maisa bereishis. Torah wants you to be a partner with the Rebbeinu Shel Olam in repairing the world. L'sakin olam b'malchus shin daled yud, we say in Aleinu. And therefore I say to you, maximize all your potentials. The worst thing in the world is when you don't maximize your potentials. And yes, we have different talents, and everyone should use their talents because we can only do it together. We can change the world together. So yes, maximize your talents and don't allow Torah to stifle your creativity. It's the exact opposite. The Torah is here to bring out the best and the greatest in you. The whole Torah is filled with this message, including the first chapter of Megillas Esther. What's this whole long story about Achashverosh throwing a party for 187 days with the most expensive fabrics and drinks in the world? Who really cares? It's not relevant to the story. The Torah is giving us one powerful lesson, and that is, you have to live life to the fullest. Madach Achashverosh, who was a melech tipish, an idiot, a fool, understood that if you could throw a party for 187 days, the best creme de la creme, you got to do it. Certainly a Jew, Am Chacham and Novin, should understand that when you have a potential in life, a talent, a resource, a faculty, live it to the fullest. Carpe diem, seize the day. You know, the Mishnah said, the Pasuk says that there are two kosher signs for fish. One kosher sign is fins, and one is scales. And the Mishnah says in Chulin and Nida that any fish that has fins, automatically it has scales. But sometimes it can have scales and not have fins. I'm sorry. If you have scales, you have fins. But you can have fins and not have scales. Kol sheyesh le kaskeses, yesh le snapper. Aval yesh le snapper, vein le kaskeses. Ask the Gemara, if every fish which has scales automatically has fins, why does the Torah have to give two signs? Let the Torah just give the signs of scales, because automatically it has fins. Answers the Gemara, Yagdil Torah v'yader, to make the Torah bigger. Tana de Beir b'shmal, Yagdil Torah v'yader. How do you make the Torah bigger? By adding the sign of fins, which is superfluous. It's unnecessary. You don't need it. And one of the most beautiful answers that I saw about this is incredible. Scales protects the fish from viruses, from bacteria, from cold water, from predators. It's a protection. Fins are like the wings of the fish. It allows it to swim. In life, fins represents Yirei Shamayim, the red lines you're not going to cross, the moral boundaries. It protects you. Fins is your power of ambition, your ability for creativity. So the Mishnah says, if you have scales, you'll automatically have fins. If you have real Yirei Shamayim, you'll develop ambition. But some people have ambition, but they're dangerous people because they don't have scales. Asks the Gemara, what do you need the siman of scale of fins? You already have the siman of scales. The answer is Yagdil Torah v'yader. The Torah doesn't only want you to be protected. The Torah also wants you to be big and creative, to be able to take your wings and go through oceans and look at the distance and say, tomorrow I'm going to be there. Today I'm here, tomorrow I'm going to be here. I'm going to take one last question. What can you tell me, one statement that could protect me from suicide and give my life some purpose and some value? Often I feel like I'm not interested in living. Living is miserable and depressing. What can you tell me to help me in this situation? You know what? Let's play that second video that my friend Meir K has, another video he made, and it's a powerful message. I want you to watch this.
Excuse me, young man. What is it that you were doing?
Throwing starfish into the ocean.
I must ask, why are you throwing starfish into the ocean?
The sun is up and the tide is going down. If I don't throw them in, they'll die.
But young man, do you not realize there are miles and miles of beach and starfish along each mile? You can't possibly make a difference.
made a difference for that one.
I love this message. I really love this message. You see, this young boy was standing at the beach and throwing in one starfish after another, and this elderly man was telling him, "You're wasting your time. You're not really making a difference. What you're doing is worthless." And he lifted up that one starfish and he said, "For this one, I made all the difference." And I think it's so true in your life and in each and every one of our lives. There is one person for whom you can make all the difference. And that's what I'm going to ask you to do. Every single day, I want to ask you to call up one person whom you know is lonely. Maybe a senior citizen, maybe an older person, maybe a widow, maybe a widower, maybe a cousin who's struggling, maybe an old friend, somebody who you know may be lonely. Call them up and just say, "I want to know how you are, and I'm thinking about you, and I'm praying for you." I know sometimes you may not be in the mood, you're not interested, you're lonely yourself, but do it anyway. Because there is one starfish for whom you can make a difference. And when you will focus on that, you will find, I believe, a lot of meaning in your life. Each and every one of us can make a difference. Don't think of changing the whole world. But the world is made up of individuals. There is one starfish, two starfish, three starfish, 10 starfish for whom you can make all the difference. There is one teenager for whom you can make all the difference. One classmate, one person, two people, three people, older or younger, for whom you can make the difference. There's a part of the world that you and only you can fix. You can make the difference. Stop telling yourself the lie. My life is meaningless. My life is worthless. Birth is God saying you matter. The fact that you were born is the master of the world saying that this world is a more impoverished place without you. This world is incomplete without you. There's something about your life that has infinite value. There's something about your life that nobody in the past, nobody in the future will be able to accomplish but you. And I also know that if you have these questions, it means you're deep and you're sensitive. Which means that when you discover your light, it's going to be deep and sensitive. And it will have a tremendous impact. So I look forward, we look forward to hear great things from you. Thank you for the question. If anybody wants to follow up on any other personal question or things I answered, you can email me directly, Rabbi YY at theyeshiva.net. I know there are a few hundred questions that I did not get to. We're going to continue next week, God willing, Thursday night, 9:30 p.m. next week, right here at theyeshiva.net. You can text your question to 845-777-4747. You can also ask your questions live at theyeshiva.net. You can ask your questions. Okay, let me take their question. Libby, why do people walk into the supermarket without masks? There are so many people sick. Libby, you are right. I agree with you. People should not go into supermarkets if they don't have to, and even if they have to remain physically distant and with masks and with gloves. Yes, you're 100% right. Racheli. Okay, so let me read her question. There's a problem with the technology here of her coming up, so let me read your question. How can I get peer pressure? How can I not get peer pressure to do bad things by people who I am forced to be surrounded by? I have to be surrounded by them, and they give me terrible peer pressure. What am I supposed to do? Racheli asks. Okay, the answer to this is as follows. I don't know the details, so it's very hard for me to be specific, but let me give you a few ideas, and then we could follow up by email, or you can apply that which is relevant to this particular situation. First of all, sometimes we don't have to be surrounded by the people that we think we have to be surrounded. It's sometimes in our mind, I feel that I have to be surrounded by this person. Sometimes you can create the proper boundaries to protect yourself in a nice, smart, and respectful way. So that will make it much easier. Sometimes there's a situation that calls for you to be close to these people, which is important, but you could still create boundaries. There's certain times, there's certain spaces, so you can be prepared and you can figure out what your needs are. So I'm going to ask you to be creative about this and don't feel that you're trapped in any particular relationship. You're more free than you think you are. You can choose your relationships. You don't have to remain stuck in certain relationships. That's number one. However, even if there is a relationship that you need to continue, or I should say you feel that you should continue, make sure that you continue it in a way that is healthy for you. And that means if the influence here is eroding your character, then this is not a good relationship for you. You have to find a different relationship. You have to be a leader in this relationship, not a victim. Remember, I'll tell you a very cute story. There was once a Jew who was complaining to the Lubavitcher Rebbe that his neighbor is not a good person. And the Gemara tells us in Sukkah, Oila Rasha, Oila Shcheinai, woe to the wicked person and woe to his neighbor. So the Rebbe responded and he told this Jew, he said something very special. He said, instead of looking at it, that he's the Rosh and you're the neighbor and you're being influenced by him, let's do it the other way. You become the tzaddik and we'll say, Toiv la tzaddik, Toiv l'shcheinai. It's good for the tzaddik. The tzaddik is good. The neighbor also becomes good. Instead of you becoming the recipient in the relationship, you become the leader in the relationship. Don't let them define you. You define them. For this, you have to be stronger. Another attitude, another important idea is, if you can, to have an open conversation with them. If they're receptive to it, to tell them about your concerns, to tell them about the boundaries, to tell them about things that they may be doing or saying that you don't like. Don't be afraid to be your true self, because people respect you much more when you are true to yourself. People are actually embarrassed by you when you're embarrassed by yourself. So the truer you are to your own identity, the better it is for your relationships, because you want to have authentic relationships. This is what I would tell you, Racheli, my dearest friends, dearest teenagers, my love and blessings to you. Stay healthy, stay quarantined, maximize the opportunity, utilize this week well, have a beautiful Shabbos, a good Chodesh. Let Hashem bring recovery to all those who need it, strength to all those who need it, healing to all of us and to all the Jewish people and to our whole planet. May we experience complete redemption very, very speedily in our days in this great transition from the month of Nissan to the month of Iyar. The Chassam Sofer says Iyar is the acronym of Ani Hashem, Ani Yud Yud Roif Echa, Ani Hashem Roif Echa. I am God, your healer. May we see that healing very, very speedily, very, very soon. I love you. Good night, good Chodesh, good Shabbos.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.